Topic 1. Baba Vanga. Sit with this one fact before we go any further. A blind woman in a Bulgarian village with no electricity correctly predicted the September 11th attacks. Months before they happened, she told a visitor, "Two steel birds will attack the American brothers. The world would never recover," she said. She said this in 1989. Her name was Baba Vanga. She lost her sight at 12, swallowed by a tornado, found days later in a field, her eyes sealed shut with dirt. From that moment, people came, thousands, then hundreds of thousands, Soviet generals, presidents. She never charged money. She sat in a dark room and talked, calmly, specific, like someone reading from a document no one else could see. What most people miss isn't that she got things right. It's how precisely. When she predicted the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, she didn't say flooding. She said, "A giant wave will cover a coast where everything disappears under the water." 127,000 people died. So when she looked at Europe in 2025 and 2026 and called it the disappearance of Europe, not a war, a disappearance, the people who had documented her predictions didn't dismiss it. They went quiet. She wasn't describing tanks or borders shifting. She described cities standing empty, populations gone, biological contamination spreading through systems too interconnected to stop. When she first said this, that language was science fiction. Today it's in defense budgets. She died in 1996, never owned a computer, never read a newswire. She sat in a dark room in Bulgaria and looked at 2025 and called it the last page of the world she knew. The question her followers still can't answer is whether she was describing something that could be stopped, or something she had already watched happen calmly from her chair in the dark. Topic 2. Clifford Stoll. In 1995, while the world was falling in love with the internet, one man published a piece in Newsweek titled, "The Internet, Bah," and the entire tech industry laughed at him for 30 years. His name was Clifford Stoll. He wasn't saying the internet wouldn't grow. He was saying it would grow too large, too fast, too fragile, until one catastrophic failure brought everything down. Security breaches not as bugs, but as the system's defining feature. Human connection so eroded, the internet would eventually become a machine talking to itself. We now have a name for what he described, the dead internet theory. The idea that what you're scrolling right now is no longer a human space. Bots, AI-generated content, manufactured engagement, a world so overrun by non-human actors that the original internet is already dead. It just hasn't stopped moving yet. Stoll wasn't wrong. He was 30 years early. The cascade failure he described is exactly what cybersecurity experts now point to as the crisis window of 2025 and 2026. A single coordinated AI-driven attack on the fragile infrastructure we built our entire civilization, and the lights go out. Not metaphorically, permanently, for long enough to change everything. He didn't predict the future, he diagnosed the disease. We spent 3 decades ignoring the symptoms. Topic 3. Saint Malachy. Deep inside the Vatican archives sits a document the Church has never officially confirmed and never denied, the Prophecy of the Popes. Attributed to Saint Malachy, a 12th century Irish archbishop who claimed to have seen every future pope, all 112 of them, each captured in a single cryptic Latin phrase. For centuries, scholars dismissed it. Then they started checking, and the descriptions kept fitting. Not perfect, but closely enough to make people deeply uncomfortable. The final entry, Pope number 112, is called Petrus Romanus, Peter the Roman. The prophecy states that during his reign, the city of 7 hills will be destroyed. The city of 7 hills is Rome. Many believe Pope Francis is that figure. His papacy aging, the church in deeper institutional crisis than anything in modern memory. After his entry, the list ends. No Pope 113, no continuation, just silence, and the unsettling suggestion that the silence is intentional, whether that means physical destruction or the slow collapse of a 2,000-year-old institution. Malachy doesn't say. He just stops writing, as if there was nothing left worth predicting, as if after Pope 112, the story simply ends. Topic 4. Klaus Schwab. Most prophets interpret the future. This one is engineering it. Klaus Schwab, founder of the World Economic Forum, has never claimed to predict anything. He says he's building it. His most famous phrase, "You will own nothing and you will be happy." His framework, the Fourth Industrial Revolution, describes a merger of physical, digital, and biological worlds so complete that existing systems must be dismantled to make room. Traditional currency replaced by central bank digital currencies. Autonomy reframed as inefficiency. Privacy reclassified as a concept from a previous era. In 2021, his organization ran Cyber Polygon, a simulation of a global cyber pandemic simultaneously targeting power grids, banking systems, and supply chains. Not a warning exercise, a planning document. Whether Schwab is a visionary or something more calculated depends entirely on who you believe this new world is being built for. But 2025 is the year his own published timeline marks as the critical inflection point, the moment the old world stops and the new one where you are a user, not an owner, begins. The world he describes doesn't happen to you. It's built around you while you're distracted by everything else. Topic 5. Ray Kurzweil. Ray Kurzweil has been right so many times it stopped being impressive and became quietly terrifying. He predicted internet dominance in the 1980s, named the decade a computer would defeat a chess world champion, called the smartphone revolution before most people owned a mobile phone. His forecasting accuracy has been independently verified at 86%. His central prediction, the singularity, the moment AI surpasses human intelligence and begins improving itself faster than we can track. He originally set that date at 2045. Then the timeline collapsed. Large language models arrived years ahead of schedule. AGI research exploded globally. Sam Altman and others began moving their own estimates forward publicly. The new consensus lands around 2027. But the precursor event, the moment we lose meaningful oversight of what we've built, is being marked as early as 2025. This is the black box problem. We are building systems whose outputs we can verify, but whose reasoning no one can follow. With every iteration, the gap between human understanding and machine capability widens, and widens faster. The question isn't whether this moment arrives. The question is what it means when the most powerful tool humanity has ever created becomes the last one it ever needs to build, because after that, the machine builds the rest. Topic 6. NASA. Everything before this was open to debate, prophecy, theory, ideology. This one is physics. Solar cycle 25. The current activity cycle of our sun is running hotter and more violent than every projection anticipated. NASA and the ESA are tracking it in real time. What they're measuring has triggered official warnings that almost never reach mainstream coverage. To understand why, you need to know what happened in 1859. A solar event called the Carrington Event struck Earth. Telegraph wires melted from the surge. Operators were electrocuted at their desks by machines that weren't even powered on. Auroras burned so brightly over the Caribbean that people read newspapers at midnight by the light of the sky. That was 1859, before the internet, before GPS, before cloud servers holding the world's banking records, power grids, and military infrastructure. If a Carrington-level event struck today, the result would be immediate and absolute. Satellites destroyed. Power transformers, which take 12 to 18 months to manufacture, melted across every continent at once. No electricity, no internet, no GPS, no banking. For months, possibly years. NASA has officially identified the solar maximum, the violent peak of this cycle, as 2025 to 2026. Scientists aren't debating if a major strike will occur. They're debating whether the sun happens to be aimed at a populated power grid when it decides to fire. This is a countdown written in stellar physics by a star 4.5 billion years old. It has fired before, it will fire again, and the sun does not care about our infrastructure. Conclusion: 6 people, 1 timeline, and the clock is already running. The future doesn't arrive with a warning, it arrives as the thing you were already looking at, finally understood too late. Who are you going to be when the world you assumed was permanent turns out not to be? Tell me in the comments, subscribe if you want to keep asking the questions that matter. This was Egg Talks. Stay curious, stay alert, and stay awake.